I've worked since I was 16 years old. My parents always said, we'll give you everything you need, and anything you want, you have to work for. And that was a lesson I learned very early.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. I have a very beautiful guest today, and she is our very own senior broadcast. I'm going to mess this up because I wrote it down. I'm going to read it. BBC television and radio journalist, senior broadcast journalist and presenter. And I think that's enough because everything else we're going to find out now. I very recently met her and I had heard a lot about her and I was so curious what she's like. And she is much nicer than I had ever thought of. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Emilia Papadopoulos.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What an introduction.
I know, I do that.
I'm going to take you everywhere with me. You can introduce. This is so lovely. Thank you. It's so nice to be here and so lovely to be talking to you today.
How does it feel to be on the other side? Because usually you're the one asking the questions.
It feels very strange. And I do have a tendency to try and take over and ask you questions. So you need to just be aware of that. I'm telling you in advance and you just say, stop it.
It's a syndrome. I have this syndrome. I have a tour guide syndrome. And when I am in a restaurant, I always feel like I need to order for everybody and I need to make sure that everybody has everything. So it's
I think it's so ingrained that I often feel very uncomfortable being asked questions, and I'm very good at deflecting and asking you the question. And I'm going to try really hard not to do that today.
You can ask me anything you want. I may not answer. Listen, I remember very fondly many, many years ago, we all used to go on Cyprus Airways to Zurich. I think we used to do Christmas here and then we traveled after Christmas. And I used to see you guys on the flight, but of course I did not know you, but I knew your mom. And you were skiing in Switzerland, didn't you?
Yes, every most years in Klosters. And we would go as a big rowdy group of lots of kids. And we kind of grew up doing that. We learned to ski here in Cyprus, in Troodos. And then my parents learned to ski a little bit. They were in their 40s and just fell in love with going to Switzerland, to Austria. So that was something, we did as a family and with family friends. And it's definitely one of my fondest memories of my childhood, those ski trips. I mean, we still ski today. I'm not very good. I'm more of an après skier. I like sitting on the side with a hot chocolate or a glass of wine. But I'm always all the gear and no idea. That's what my husband says. But it's great memories and it's great holidays and what a small world that we came across each other.
Because I'm a skier. I was kind of 2 years old when I started skiing because I'm from a village in Switzerland. And I agree with you. I love skiing but after 2-3 hours, I get bored. And then I become like you. And then it's a glass of wine or one of those coffees with the cream on top and a little bit.
Yeah. I happily have those too.
Yeah.
We should definitely go skiing together and not ski. We just find a nice restaurant up at the top, sit there, watch the world go by.
Those lounge chairs where we can have a little sun.
That's my kind of life, Lisbeth.
I think we have a first date.
Definitely.
Tell me, Emilia, did you always know that you wanted to become what you became? Did you always know that you would want to be on television one day?
I think so. I think I've always been a performer. Since I was a little girl, I remember, I was in a lot of school plays and I never got the main character part. I always had the narrator or, the person that was kind of on the side, but very important to the story. And I was always telling stories. And I remember going to Athens on a school trip and holding my hairbrush on the bus and telling everybody, where we are and what used to happen and why it was important. I think I've always enjoyed that aspect of life, finding stories, telling stories. And I think, I never knew that it was a career possibility, I guess. It was something that came to me while I was at university doing student radio, student TV. And I said, this is what I want to do. And obviously, growing up in Cyprus, it's not something you hear often because everybody's a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant or a dentist. And that stuff just never came naturally to me. And I thought maybe I'll be an actress, but that was a little bit risky. And this was sort of a safe way for me to do what I wanted. And it took a while. It took a long time to get there, but I always knew that it would happen. Do you know what I mean? And I don't say that in sort of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Not in an arrogant way. I think I grew up in that way, that everything was a possibility. My mum always used to say, there's no such word as can't. And
lovely. That is very inspiring.
Yeah. And at the time when you're young, I never really understood that. But she said it so many times. And I think it was so ingrained. I never felt that I had barriers. My parents never said, well, you can't do this. You can't do that. They just said, yeah, go for it. And so I did.
That was going to be one of my questions, actually. What did you study? Because I know that you studied in Leeds, but what was your?
So I studied communications and international relations. Left Leeds, went to London, thinking I would roll up at the BBC and they would roll out a red carpet for me. And of course, that didn't happen. So I decided I would do a master's in radio. I was never interested in doing television. I always wanted to do radio because growing up in Cyprus, before Netflix, before the internet, before satellite TV, I had seen how the BBC World Service had really, molded and shaped my daily life, but especially my mum, who's English, and who was far from England. That's how she got her news. That's how she felt connected to where she was from. It was a very powerful tool. And I think I realized from quite early on how powerful radio was. And I think there was just such a huge number of people that want to go into TV and be on TV. That wasn't really initially what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be on the radio and tell stories and make people feel like they were at home. Because actually, having done both radio and TV, I think radio is definitely a lot harder to do. TV, you have the pictures there. The pictures tell the story. You don't really have to do that much. Whereas with radio, you have to paint pictures with words. You have to use your voice in different ways for different things. It was a lot more challenging, but also a very beautiful process. And having started at the BBC in the studio, watching people like Vanessa Feltz doing her morning show, or Danny Baker, or Robert Elms, and you see these people I was completely in awe. I was making cups of tea as a junior producer and thinking, one day that might be me, but just listening to the way they use their voice. And I'll never, ever forget. But I think the BBC is definitely one of those places. You just walk around and it's just constant inspiration and constant reminders of what could be or what could become.
That's amazing. Because I was going to ask you, did you feel that did your parents ever tell you, what journalism, television, radio, what are you going to do when you come back to Cyprus? But they didn't, because they supported you in everything you did.
Yeah, they did. And I think, my dad is Cypriot, but he wasn't born here. He was born in Africa. My mum is English. They lived in the UK themselves for, they were married. They lived there for many years, maybe more than 10 years, maybe even, definitely more than 10 years. And it was they very much allowed me to drive the ship, to sail the ship and decide what I wanted to do. And I think that's a huge help. I never had this pressure of what are you going to do when you come back and where are you going to work and how are you going to make money? I think, I've worked since I was 16 years old. My parents always said, we'll give you everything you need and anything you want, you have to work for. And that was a lesson I learned very early. I had a lovely childhood, a very fortunate childhood because, my parents worked very hard. We had a lovely childhood, but it was never, there was always work ethic. That was a very big conversation in our house and definitely something that my brother and I, kind of learned by seeing. When you see people doing something, it becomes a natural part. I worked everywhere, in hotel bars, I worked in Starbucks, I worked in a furniture shop. And that's how I learned very early on about, and I think that's also one of the reasons why I didn't mind that it took time to get to that place. I was used to doing so many little jobs and working my way up. But I never had that pressure of you have to come back to Cyprus. They definitely supported me when I said, I'm going to do this masters. I'm going to be on the radio. I will get to the BBC. And, I don't know if you believe in manifesting.
Oh, I do.
But it's
Very
something,
much.
yeah. It's something I used to do a lot when I was younger. And I think I probably wouldn't dare to dream now as much as I did back then. So I think manifesting was something I definitely did so much back then. And I don't think I would dare to dream or dare to manifest, as it were, now the way I did back then. But I remember when my parents said, well, what are you going to do? The master's is finished. You've done the internships. What's next? And I'll never forget. I was so determined to work at the BBC. And I'd said, you know what? I'm going to work at the BBC. I've got an internship, which I hadn't. So I thought, right, we need to make this internship work, because then I'm going to look like a liar and someone that is, off their rocker. And I did. And I rolled up there. I'd sent so many emails. I'd sent messages. I got the email of one of the producers there, and nobody ever responded. So I thought one day I'll just show up. And again, this is something I absolutely would not do today, because I'd probably be arrested. But I went there and I said, I need to do this. And I was convincing enough, clearly. And I got an internship at BBC London, which was for a week. And they weren't hiring, and they just moved into a new building. And the editor said to me, we really, we can't take any new people. And on the Friday, he said, what are you still doing here? I said, I'm just finishing. He said, oh, finish it on Monday. And, that was the start. And then it went from an internship. And I don't think I ever really told my parents at the time that it was not a proper job.
They're going to listen to it,
Yeah, they will. No, they know now. But it was a casual contract. It wasn't a full-time job. It wasn't a 2-year contract. It was nothing like that. At the time, it was a flexible, casual contract where you were paid per week. But to me, that was all the money in the world. That was the holy grail. I was in the door at the BBC working, and I just knew that every day for me, every day there was always the possibility of tomorrow. I knew the contract would be ending in a month's time. I thought, you know what? It's okay. We have 3 weeks to change it. We'll change the course. And I did that for almost 10 years there. But, when I was offered my first permanent contract, it just felt like such a huge achievement. And again, it's not a career that you do for the money, because you can make very good money, especially when you work there for a long time or in any kind of industry. But for me, it was never about that. For me, it was just being there, being part of history, being part of something, being in a place where I felt proud every day to work, going to parties and people say, what do you do? And I couldn't wait for somebody to ask me. So I could say, I work at the BBC.
Oh my God.
I was really, really proud to be there. And, I put everything I had into my career at the BBC, and they also gave me a lot back. So it was really good times.
You said so many things now. I that like the one thing that I want to sort of come back to is that you worked as a young person and you did kind of jobs that people maybe would look down at, and I think that is exactly the secret to becoming and starting a good career. Because if you are used to doing things that are common or unusual, then you will be able to do anything, and whatever becomes better, you enjoy more and more, because you feel like, you're moving up, you're getting to something more. And I think if you start with a top job, and if you start with, I don't know what, then there is no, I think there is also not so much satisfaction. I think it becomes much more satisfactory if you work your way up like you did.
100%. And I think at the time when you're 16 and it's summer in Cyprus and all your friends are at the beach and going clubbing, and you're having to wake up and to go and scrub toilets at Starbucks, that's not fun. At the time, I didn't enjoy doing it per se. There were moments that I had fun and meeting people and doing those jobs. But it's actually later on in life that I appreciated the importance of doing those things, because I think what it does, I was listening to something the other day and they were talking about employability. how young people today become less and less employable because everything has to happen in an instant. You want a top job, it has to come today. Just the way, like, if we want a pair of shoes, we go online today, it gets delivered tomorrow. And life becomes this sort of instant gratification. And I think what it teaches you working is, well, number one, the value of money. Because believe you me, when I found out how long it takes to earn, at the time it was Cypriot pounds, 100 Cypriot pounds, the sunglasses I wanted my parents to buy me, or the pair of jeans, I didn't want to spend my own money on that, knowing how long it took to earn it. But I think actually employability is something that we don't talk about enough when it comes to young people. Be employable, be the yes person. When I was at the BBC, one of the editors said to me, "Oh, Emilia's a yes girl, ask her." And I remember thinking, it's not a bad thing that I'm a yes girl, because a lot of people were no people. They worked to rule to the hour. They took their break at a certain time. And I was always there saying, yes, I'll do it. Oh, double shift, I'll do it. Work in the middle of the night, I'll do it. I was very hungry for every opportunity that I could get. And I think, that's it. For my big advice to young people going out into the workforce would be employable. Say yes, do everything to the best of your ability. Don't half anything. And when I was scrubbing those toilets at Starbucks, you best believe I was doing it with all my heart. They were going to be the cleanest toilets. You do everything well and you don't cut corners, whether it's cleaning toilets, serving coffee, rolling out sunbeds in the morning, whatever it is, because later on in life, that translates, I think, to whatever it is that you want to do.
Oh my God, that is very, very beautiful and very, very true. Never feel too good for something. And
you can't,
and life will reward you.
It will. And, you don't take things, another thing is, I think everyone grows up differently, but I think when you've done those jobs as well, the way I am in a restaurant or on an airplane or in a bar, the way I treat people is, I often think, am I insane? I know what it's like to be on the other side of the counter when someone's in a hurry and they've had a bad day. It's not very nice. I take it upon myself to always remind myself that you don't ever want to be that person. Yeah. And sometimes when I see people, for me, it's one of the biggest injustices in this world, that the way people talk to service staff or treat them. And I think everyone should do those jobs. I think it should be absolutely compulsory. Because not everyone is fortunate enough to go away and study and do something else, or whatever it is, whether it's a summer job or a full-time career. There are people who are really, really good at it, and everyone must be treated with respect and kindness.
Well, we should always treat people the way we want to be treated. And
absolutely.
Karma never loses an address, I believe. So
I'm with you there.
Your time at the BBC, we said that we weren't going to go into details because you have done many interviews, podcasts, and you've talked about that.
No, I'm happy to.
I don't want to. I want to talk. The only thing that I wrote down is that you reported from Sandringham for the Queen's Christmas celebration. What did you do after you left?
Oh, I don't know. Someone else came in, but it was the best Christmases that I spent. Honestly, what an honor! What an absolute! What an experience! And I never forget when they asked me to do it, and they said, "Would you be interested in doing this?" Because I think for a lot of people, it's Christmas Day, it's freezing cold. But for me, that was the holy grail of,
I would think so.
I've arrived.
And I've seen a quote. There is I've seen a YouTube video, and you were wearing a very, very beautiful coat.
Which one? The mint one? Because one year it was like a dark purple, sort of a violet, not violet. Maybe it was like more of a mauve. And then there was the aquamarine.
Aquamarine one. Beautiful.
Oh, that was such a good coat. That was lent to me by Burberry for the day, because it's called the Sandringham coat. And it was so beautiful, and I was just manifesting and praying that they would never contact me to give it back, but they did. About 2 days later, they said, "Right, we're sending a courier, send it back." And so my heart broke a little bit.
The manifesting didn't always work.
No, that was the one time it didn't come through for me, when I wanted to keep that beautiful coat.
list.
But it was great. It was a really, I mean, it was a great experience to be at Sandringham on the Queen's estate, and it was just something else, and something that I'll always be grateful for and always remember.
I think, and we are all of Cyprus is very proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
I want to go back a little bit. It's a question that I normally ask at the beginning, because you are half British and you are half Cypriot, and I would imagine that you traveled to the UK when you were very small. How old were you when you were on a plane for the first time?
The first time, I mean, I think my mother took me to a meeting she had in Austria when I was 1. So it would have been, I think, around 6 months or 1. I'm sure she'll shout through in a minute and correct me. But yeah, I was very young the first time I went on a plane. And my whole childhood, I remember my dad worked a lot in Asia, in Russia, in the Middle East. I mean, he was always traveling. He worked in banking. So he was always on planes. And we were always on planes in the summer, going to see my family in the UK. And it was just something we grew up doing. And I'll never forget, it was such an occasion in the 90s, going on planes. Like, my mum would have her hair done. We'd all be dressed really nicely. Not now and I'm guilty of this too. We're waltzing into an airport in a tracksuit and looking really scruffy. I think that's just what we do nowadays. But back then, it was just such a treat. It was such a huge special thing going on an airplane, and the excitement that we had. So we definitely were really fortunate to grow up traveling and seeing a lot of the world with my parents. They were very into it as well. So we did quite a lot of that. And in the summers, my brother and I would travel alone to the States to summer camp, and that's a 4-week, 4-week duration. We're completely on our own, traveling from London Heathrow to almost the other side of the world, which is quite far when you're young. I don't think you do that nowadays with your children. But it was, again, a big lesson in responsibility and, bravery and all that kind of thing.
A fantastic experience. But I also agree with you when we used to dress nice for traveling. And I was a tour guide, and sometimes we had to choose people to upgrade because economy was full and we needed to find people who we could put in business. And we always chose them by the way they were dressed.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. Maybe I will take that on next time I'm on a flight. And maybe they'll look at me and say, you know what? This lady deserves a break today. Let's put her in.
You look good enough for business. So BBC and living in the UK, when did you feel that you wanted to come back to Cyprus?
Oh, I never did, if I'm really honest with you. I never in a million years thought anybody could ever pull me away from that job, because that was my entire identity. And, I was tired. I was really tired by then. And I was not as enthusiastic as I was. I wasn't the yes girl that I was. I'd started saying no. I was more picky on the stories I did. But I think that's also a natural progression. As you get more senior in that kind of role, being able to say no to the cat stuck up a tree story and say, no, I really want to investigate this or this. And things were going very well with work. And it became my whole identity. Going out, people maybe recognizing me on the flight back to Cyprus or on the tube. And I took such great pride in that, not because I would seem famous or anything like that, but I thought maybe I must be doing a good job. If people know who I am, then I must be doing a good job. So I think because it had become my entire identity, which is also a problem, leaving it becomes an issue. I never thought I would leave. And my childhood sweetheart, who had broken my heart at the age of 21, called me one day. He was a family friend and he was a friend of my brother. So he was always someone that was in my life, but I had not spoken to him in 8 years out of pure spite and revenge. I thought, I'm never speaking to this person again. And along he came. And that was it, Elizabeth. I never in a million years thought, we went on one date as two grown-up people, not the people that we knew in our 20s. And that was it. He'd already moved back to Cyprus and he said, move back with me. Sometimes your brain says, this is this is not what you want. But my heart said, this is 100% what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And I didn't think about it twice. I handed in my notice that February, 6 months after our initial date, which actually also involved a lot of travel because he wooed me with traveling to really fun places. And I handed in my notice and people said, they thought it was a joke. Why?
Mm-hmm.
But why? Why are you leaving? And everyone said, you can't leave. You can't leave. I said, but there was something I read and it said, life takes you to unexpected places and love always brings you home. And that made me just feel like this is the right decision.
Which places did he take you to?
He wowed me with our second date in St. Lucia, where he surprised me at the airport. I know. He surprised me at the airport. I didn't know where we were going, and I'd never been to the Caribbean before. And we stayed in the most amazing, for a couple of the first nights, in a hotel that was open air in treetops, and you could just hear this rainforest. It was just amazing. I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. So that was amazing. And then we went down to a beach resort that was also, it was the nicest place I'd ever been to. It was wonderful. And we did sailing and just a very much needed, escape. And I thought, maybe it's time to breathe. Life cannot always just be about work. And that was it, really. And I handed in my notice. I moved back. We got married. I was miserable for years.
Did you want children? Did you think of wanting children?
Always. But, when I first moved back, as much as I wanted to and as happy as I was with my husband, I thought, I couldn't understand Cyprus. I grew up here, but there are no queues. It takes forever to get anything done. There is no order to anything. It drove me absolutely mad for the first couple of years. Now I'm very used to it and I love it and I wouldn't change it for the world. But yes, children, I always wanted children. And I never forget when I was at the BBC, somebody interviewed me and said, what is your goal? What is your big goal? And I said, to be a wife and a mother. And I don't think that was the question they were asking. I think they were kind of asking about career goals.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always something that I wanted. I desperately wanted children. And that was just something. As soon as we got married, we said, right, let's have children. And then you think it's going to happen immediately. And it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And you wait. And, people go through, the things people go through. And you hear more and more about it. I think we're talking about it more nowadays. And we should talk about it.
Thank God we do, because it has happened before and it has been a problem before, but it was just a taboo. I think talking about it really, really helps.
Yeah, it does. It hugely helps. And I've always been very open about it to anybody that wants to talk about it or anybody that needs to talk about it, because you feel embarrassed. You feel like there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. I visited every doctor from here to Timbuktu, every specialist in London, in Athens, in Cyprus. I had countless procedures that I probably didn't need. I had rounds of IVF. I had ultrasounds and x-rays and God knows what else. The lot, everything. I became very depressed. Life stopped being exciting and happy. And it was just about having a baby. Somebody might stroll past me in a pram and I would have an emotional breakdown. And not because, or a friend would get pregnant and it would be a really difficult thing because you're so happy for them, mm-hmm. but you're devastated for you. And, I always felt guilty about that. And I thought, I'm a bad person for thinking this. And my doctor at the time recommended that I see a therapist. Again, not another thing that people commonly talk about, but, for me, it was a lifeline. We look after our face. We go for facials and we go to the gym to look after our muscles.
Absolutely.
And therapy is looking after your brain. And
totally.
It's, it's for me, one of those things that keeps me sane. But this therapist saved my life. She really did, because I was in the depths of a really nasty depression and anxiety. Couldn't even walk past a baby. And, that's life, right? People deal with these things. And there are people that have been trying to have babies for far longer than I had at the time. But, you can't really control how it takes you. And it took a long time. And, I don't know what it was. I then said, you know what, I'm throwing in the towel. We're going traveling. I've had enough of this babies and IVF and injections and hormones. I'm not doing it anymore.
Imagine. It's tough, isn't it? Yeah.
What will be, will be. And I threw everything away. I said, don't want to see another doctor. I don't want to talk about babies. And I said to my husband, let's do something fun. So we did something that we never do. We took a flight on the day, somewhere random, which was it was Croatia.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no plan. And it was one of the best, most memorable summers of my life. We went from Croatia, then we flew to Berlin, and then to, God, I'm going to get this wrong. I think we went to Zurich as well. And we ended up in Ibiza, and we just went on an adventure. Whatever flight was coming at that time, that's what we were taking. And we don't normally travel that way. We're normally very programmed people. We choose a hotel, we look at reviews, we book our flights in advance. We weren't doing that this time. We were going to do things differently. And that's what we did. And we had a wild summer that ended in Ibiza, which was so much fun. I'd never been there before. And that really helped me. You know, I forgot about it. I didn't
relax you. It relaxed you. And that's when you become pregnant. When you're relaxed, you weren't relaxed before.
Yeah, and I did. I mean, not long after that trip, naturally, was really fortunate. I fell pregnant with my daughter, who is now almost 4. And then my son was another complete surprise almost a year after that. And, you know, it's almost, you do kind of forget the pain you went through. It's kind of like childbirth once it happens. And then you say, I'm never going to have another baby. And then somehow you do. But I really, in those moments, the depths of the despair I had been in, wanting and longing for a child, I never thought I would get out of that. And I think that's just the negative mindset that you get into. And I think a lot of therapy, and as you say, relaxing and just trying to accept that, you know, it took me a long time to accept that, you know what, if this is my hand, I'm going to make the most of it. There are options out there, and I will exhaust all of them. Because I really want to be a mother. I want to love somebody. I want to raise somebody. I want to nurture somebody. I just have this love, burning desire inside me to hold a small baby. And I can't really describe it. It sounds a little bit mad, doesn't it? But
not at all. I know exactly what you mean. And I totally agree with the fact that when I can imagine, I didn't have any problems getting pregnant, but I work with people sometimes as a hypnotherapist who have these problems. The more you want, the less it works, you know, and it's exactly like in your case. And then you get to the point where you think, okay, whatever will be. And that's when it happens.
Yeah. And, you know, I resigned myself. I said, you know what, we have one life and I'm not going to waste it. You know, I was newly married and I was miserable, and my poor husband, I mean, he is just the most relaxed and giving and nurturing person. And I just felt sorry because I wasn't giving him my best self either. I had no reason to be that miserable. You know, it wasn't the end of the world, but for me it was. Every day was darkness. Every month brought with it darkness and no babies, and no babies meant no happiness. And, you know, you've met me. I'm quite a happy, chirpy person.
You are. You're gorgeous.
And I don't, you know, I'm not. It felt very strange to be that way, to just always have this thing in my mind just bugging me all the time about getting pregnant. And I think it's a struggle that nobody should go through alone. And, you know, I'm always open about it. If anyone wants to ever talk to me,
I
you can get in touch.
If someone listens to this, because this is very encouraging, to be able to talk about it. We should just talk about things. There is everybody goes through shit, whatever it is. There is so much. And, you know, there is no perfect person. The only perfect people are the ones who are dead. Well, they're not perfect anymore, but you know what So
exactly. No, we have to talk about it and have the conversation, because, you know, I think it's also another important thing to say is that, you know, I underwent every blood test and every procedure, and this, it might be this, it might be that, and I just fell for absolutely everything. And I don't believe, in a lot of those circumstances, I don't believe those doctors had my best interest at heart. I believe a lot of it I was taken advantage of in a lot of, and I consider myself to be, you know, pretty witty, pretty pretty streetwise. But when you're so
You're
desperate
in
for
the weaker
something,
position, and that's what they usually use. We're
so,
already far into time, but I want to ask a last kind of question or touch a last subject about that manifesting that you don't do anymore. But if you could, what would you manifest now? 2 children later, happy in Cyprus. What's in Emilia's list of things that she would like?
That is a very, very difficult question because, at the moment, I am just, I think it's the first time in my life I'm so content. And I never liked being content before because I always felt that meant I wasn't striving far enough or stretching or reaching or working to my full potential. And I think this is the first time, I'm running a business. I've got my 2 small children and I feel like I'm balancing everything horribly. Don't really get anything done, but I feel really, really grateful and really, really happy. I always thought I would fear getting older, and I love it. Actually, I think it's a huge privilege. So I think I would just manifest. I don't know if you can manifest things like this because perhaps they're not so much in your control, but I would just manifest to continue being this grateful and happy and healthy and just wish the same for everybody around me because, the world is on fire at the moment. You don't have to look far from where we are, not far from here. Yeah. And that's something I think about often. And it's something that is very close to my heart. And, I manifest that we all just get along and everybody's happy because I think to be fortunate enough to put my children to sleep every night with a roof over their head and a warm blanket and have food in their tummies, that's enough for me. At this point in my life, that's all I really, really want.
That is beautiful. And what you are talking about is something that people call that you don't have because you are happy, but it's called the more disease. It's not necessary to always want more. I think the secret to a happy life is to be happy and grateful with what you have, and then occasionally have a little wish or have a little something that you want to do. And you do. I mean, I met you because you were the MC at the Cyprus Diaspora Forum. And that was a big deal. For me, that was a big deal. And you did that wonderfully. And
thank you.
There is more and more of these things that you will be able to do. And in the meantime, you will be able to look after your beautiful babies. And trust me, these times never come back and they pass very, very quickly. So enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, I think they say that, don't they, that the hours are long, but the years are short with small children. And I definitely feel that. And I love being able to do presenting on the side and doing that. That makes me so happy to be around people like you and meet new people and just be in those kind of environments, which is wonderful. But, I think all of us have gone through those years. I guess my 20s were my more disease. Needed more of everything, more shoes, more handbags, more promotions, more stories, more this. And, it's nice to finally get to that place in life where, as you said, you don't need any more. Every now and then it's nice to have treats or to, whether it's going out for a meal or going on a holiday or buying yourself something nice. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But just to be content with what you have, because we do have more than most. And I think that's my vibe at the moment, Elizabeth. I'm just on a gratitude train. Beautiful. Come join me.
We are going to put your website in the show notes in case somebody wants to book you, maybe to present the Oscars or the Golden Globes or something.
I'm available for the Oscars and the Golden Globes. Yep.
So I will. You could take a break in motherhood and do that. So
for the Oscars, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you so much for taking the time and being on Most Memorable Journeys today, Emilia Papadopoulos.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.